All right, good morning and welcome to the talk Discover Weekly, or How Autonomy Saved One of Spotify's Most Loved Features from Being Killed, with the alternative subtitle How We Accidentally Fixed Mondays. And I'm going to tell you more about that subtitle in a bit. My name is Joakim Sundén, and I'm a consultant with CRISP, a small boutique consultancy with 25 specialists, experts in transformations and coaching and coding, often with a slant towards lean, agile, or product thinking, product model. And before CRISP, I was at Spotify, where I was employed as an Agile Coach from 2011, or from 8 teams, as we sometimes put it, until 2017, or more than 200 teams. And I was part of the group who worked together with the CTO to come up with things like tribes and squads and chapters and guilds. That's hence been called the Spotify model. You have some contact information for me here. So if there's anything that you feel that you couldn't ask, that we didn't get to, or something you want to challenge or whatever, reach out. You follow me on LinkedIn or just shoot an email. I'd be happy to jump on a call. I'm also the author or co-author of a book called Kanban in Action. That's translated to Japanese and Chinese and even simplified Chinese, if Chinese is too tricky for you. So I'm here to talk about Discover Weekly and how that was developed at Spotify. And through doing that, showcasing a little bit what the Spotify model, or as it's also called these days, the product model or product operating model is all about, and how that's different from, let's say, Scrum, which is the name of this track. So if you don't know Discover Weekly, the feature, it's a playlist, you could say, in Spotify. So Spotify is a music streaming service. I hope most of you understand that and how a playlist works. So I could create my own playlist like this, summer rotation, things that I listen to in summer by Joakim Sundén, or I can choose to follow playlists like Funk Outta Here by Spotify, and so on. But then, all of a sudden, this shows up, made for Joakim Sundén. And look, it even has a picture of me. I didn't put that picture here. I didn't create this. What's up with that? And if I click on that playlist, I will get 30 songs that I've never listened to before on Spotify. And there's a big chance that I will like many of these songs and would like to play them and follow them. So that's basically Discover Weekly. But let's go back a little bit in time. And do you remember how you used to find good music to listen to before Spotify? It was something like this. So you would go into a big record store, ideally, if you were into that. This is Amoeba Records in Los Angeles. And, browse there and find something you love, maybe listen to it. I could spend an hour easily at a store like that. Friends who are more music nerds than me, colleagues at Spotify, would say, they could spend a day browsing through and just listening. My mom, on the other hand, if she was following along, I mean, she loves music, but she knows what she likes. So she would not be that fond of browsing for new stuff. So she would probably rather go at the clothes store across the street instead. And we'll come back to that, why that's important, what my mom would do. So then Spotify came along and did this. Search. So now at the power of your fingertips, you can find most of the music, if not all, that you see behind you in the music store, and much, much more. And if you, like me, had grown up like with Kazaa or Napster or piracy, which was very dominant in the early 2000s, especially in Sweden, where we had Pirate Bay and the world's best internet infrastructure, people would download, and we would use these tools and search for music at parties and see, hopefully there was someone connected and you could find the music you wanted to listen to. You downloaded it, you had to wait some time. Sometimes they had, named the songs differently and you weren't sure something else would actually play. So imagine then Spotify searching for everything. Most of it you could find. It was amazing, and it started playing instantly. This, of course, was intriguing to a lot of people. But let's take Mom again. When I showed her Spotify for the first time, oh look, Mom, this is so amazing. I said, oh, what do I do? What should I type? Well, what do you listen to? The Beatles? The Beatles aren't on the service. Sorry, try something else. Spotify fixed that, by the way. Okay, Rolling Stones. Yeah, Rolling Stones. Oh, look, they got it. Oh, interesting, cool. And we listen to that. So at the Spotify headquarters, the CEO and one of the founders, Daniel Ek, would say, "Yay, we've nailed search and play. That's awesome." So people can find and search and play and curate playlists and really find everything they want to listen to. But there's a but. If you don't know what you want to listen to, our product is useless. So we had been able to get the early adopters, the technology evangelists, the innovators, and people who really like music and would be willing to spend time curating their playlists, following people, following playlists, finding the right music. That type of people who would go into a record store. We call this user segment lean forward. They lean in and they search and curate music. But the lean back users, the mainstream users, like the billions of people that we want to reach, they weren't that interested in doing that. They didn't have the time or engagement to do it. To them, the search box was more intimidating than promising. So how could this became a strategic focus then for Spotify. How can we reach this lean back mainstream audience? One way that we tried was radio. So you could choose a genre and a decade, so maybe 70s jazz, and start listening to that. We built more and more elaborate features. You could seed it with an artist or even a playlist and get a radio station based on that. But it didn't really take off in the way we hoped it would. My guess is that people who like to listen to radio, well, they listen to radio, not necessarily Spotify. So we started experimenting with something called Discover. So this was a Netflix kind of recommendations in a Pinterest style. You could just scroll forever. So you listened to Of Mice and Men recently. You want to try Motionless Invite? And the music nerds at the company, they love this. There's a connection between Mice and Men and Motionless Invite. Yeah, I should check that out. And that's interesting. And you could just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. But my mom, she wouldn't wake up on Sunday morning and say, oh, great, now I have an hour for music discovery. Now I'm going to flip through all these things. No, she just wanted to tune into something and listen to it. If it's good, continue. If it's bad, tune into something else. That was kind of the effort she was willing to put in. So there was just too much friction. And at the time, there were, talking heads in the music industry that said, mainstream users, they don't want to discover new music. They just want to listen to the same old, and you shouldn't be building recommendations. And part of that sentiment was also at Spotify, because we didn't get anywhere really with the Discover things. But a couple of engineers in a team that were working with Discover and recommendations, they thought, no, that can't be true. We know people love music. There must be a better way to create discovery with less friction. So they came up with an idea. It was actually on a hack week where you can work with anything you want. There was a feature at Spotify already that's called Year in Music. Now it's known as Wrapped. So at the end of the year, you will get some stats. This is the artist you listen to the most. These are the genres that you listen to. And they used the listening history for that year and the Discover algorithm that we already had to create a playlist that was called Play It Forward. This is what you've been listening to the year. So the idea was this is maybe for next year worth checking out. And they had some engagement with that playlist too, so it was pretty cool. But then they saw months later, they were astonished to find that millions of users remained engaged with that playlist. So this seemed to be working. So would there be a way to just create a playlist like this and update it more frequently? And they pitched this idea to the product manager, who immediately brought in a product designer or UX designer to play the role of the bad cop, as they often have to do. So they were, no, why would we need this? It's already so bloated. Mainstream lean-back users, they want a simple interface. We can't put anything in there that's confusing to them and not natural. And by the way, recently, Apple Music worked with U2 and put U2's new album in all users' libraries. And they were just in shock. And there was such a backlash, and Apple got so much complaints. And they had to develop a special tool to remove U2's album from all the libraries. So this is a big no-no. You can't put anything that we've generated into the user-generated playlist area. You can't do it. Okay, they understood the critique, but we are aware of the risks. We strongly believe in the idea still. So let's try it, because it was really simple. It was not building much new really. So we already had data on how 75 million users at that time were listening to Spotify. We had algorithms that we could use to cluster these into micro-genres. We had a user interface, the playlist, that everyone understood intuitively. Was not that hard. And then it was basically using collaborative filtering to come up with good recommendations. For those of you who don't know, let's say that you have a playlist that you've spent some time curating. You've got together a playlist with 20 songs. And now it turns out you believe maybe that you're this unique snowflake and you have a very unique taste. But it turns out we can actually find thousands, if not tens of thousands of people who listen to roughly those same 20 songs or have roughly those songs on their playlists. But they also have in common, maybe 80% of them have in common that they also have these 2 or 3 songs on their playlists that you have never listened to on Spotify. So there's a high chance you will like it. So that's kind of the foundation of how it works. So much of this was already in place. All right, so we have this new idea. The designer shot it down a little bit. The product manager thought it had some merit, but it wasn't just like, wow, this is going to rock the world. So can we do it? Can we go ahead with it? So in traditional organizations that I sometimes used to call bureaucratic or hierarchical or plan-driven, you have top management. They typically understand that we shouldn't meddle with what teams and people in the front lines are doing. It's way too detailed. They don't have to be micromanaged. We shouldn't be doing that. We couldn't be doing it. But still, we have the responsibility for the company's success. We need to know that we're doing the right things and refocusing our efforts on better opportunities, that we're working on the thing that has the most return of investment. So how do we do that? Well, we only care about the big things, the big strokes, the big picture. So let's have plans and projects. Let's only fund the projects, and let's decide which one has the best return on investment and focus and prioritize them. Sounds like a good idea, right? But the problem is, in order to choose which project should we fund, you have to understand who needs to be involved, what resources, as they will typically refer to people as, when are they needed, to what extent, what will it cost. And to figure all these things out, you need to lock down a lot of decisions on what should we be doing, what should we build, how should it be working. So you need to put a lot of analysis into that. And now you've kind of decided a lot of the things without involving the front lines. So it becomes your job to come up with the ideas and for the front line to simply implement or execute. You control through long-term projects, detailed budgets, and toll gates. And then middle management, the only way they can control it is, well, they can allocate resources, and because these plans that are long and detailed, involving lots of people and created at a time where we don't have lots of information about how things are actually going to work and so on, it's a lot of guesses. But we have all people utilized in all these projects, and then when some project runs into a problem, we have to reallocate resources. So it's a constant rebudgeting and reallocation of resources and making sure that are we delivering on budget, time, and scope? Are we delivering the right thing? That's not my job. That's someone else's to figure out. This is the things I'm focusing on. And then we've built silos or departments because we want resource utilization and efficiency and economy of scale. So we build departments, and that means that collaboration becomes hard as the organization grows between these silos. And we really don't have a feedback loop. What we learn here on the front lines is not fed back to the top, because we won't know what the customer thinks about it or if it's really the right solution. We're just going to make it life easier for us and assume that, well, if we're building what the customer said they wanted, what the user said they wanted, roughly, and deliver it, well, maybe a little bit late, maybe a little bit less scope, but still, that's a success, right? Not necessarily, as we'll see. And we don't know until we delivered it, and then it's probably late. So we're busy starting the next project to even check if we were reaching the outcome that we wanted. So Spotify took another approach. We call it autonomous squad. And in the words of our CTO at the time, the most important feature of the organization, the most important feature is the autonomous squad. All other features of the organization are designed to support that mini startup-like squad. When I left Spotify, the rest of the world had also started talking about autonomy, but I quickly realized that they had a slightly different definition. To most organizations, autonomy meant, we can release independently. But to us, it had bigger meaning, this mini startup thing. And luckily, Marty Kagan has done a great job of defining exactly what this is. And he has often referred to the autonomous squad as an example of what he calls an empowered product team. So that's the same thing. The most important thing is to empower teams by assigning them problems to solve and then give the teams the space to solve them. So the teams need to be able to work together, continuously addressing the risks inherent in product development. And they need to do it in a cross-functional way. Because one risk is, the value risk. Will people buy it or choose to use it? That's often represented by the product owner or product manager. Is it viable to the business? Can we actually, will it work for the various dimensions? Will it bring us money? Does it support our business model? Is it in line with legal requirements and compliance and so on? And also, is it usable? Can users figure out how to use it and access it to the extent that we will get value, and they will? And is it feasible? Can we build it with time, skills, and the technology we have? And often, the ones who are working with the technology every day, they are in a unique position to see what is just now possible. So in the example of Discover Weekly, this wasn't that a user would ask for. It wasn't something that the product manager came up with. They saw an opportunity with the current technology, how we can repurpose it to actually create value. And this is a continuous work that needs to be done in collaboration, because the successful product is built in the intersection between all these four. So give teams problem to solve, give the teams the space to solve them. That was the philosophy, the principles at work at Spotify. But it's also essential that we define success by business results, that is outcome, not simply activity or output. And just to make sure that everyone is on the same page. So we see a lot of needs that go unfulfilled with users and customers, pain points and things that are not working the way they want it to. We maybe see declining revenue and brand recognition. And this leads us to get a lot of ideas on what we could be doing. Ideas for new products, new features, new enhancements, specifications, requirements is not something they unfortunately quickly turn into. But we don't know, are these going to be the right products and features? But we quickly fall in love with the feature and the enhancement and believe, this is gonna make it. Or even to the point where we're given specifications and requirements because someone else has done this job. and we stop caring about, or we forget about, but are we actually changing the outcome? Are people happier? Do we feel less pain? Are we increasing the impact for the company and revenue and brand recognition? We really want to minimize output. We don't want to deliver lots and lots of production scale code. If we can prototype our way and figure out through different product discovery techniques, for instance, that whether we're going to reach the outcome or not, that's what we want to maximize. So the activities, epics, features, stories, whatever you want to call it, that's how we believe we are going to reach our goals. And it's surprising how often we forget that. It's like, no, we know it's going to help us reach our goals. Really? They are just hypotheses, bets. They have to change if the numbers aren't improving. Unfortunately, these bets have a low success rate. And this is something we learned again and again. All the intuitive things that we came up with at Spotify. New people coming into Spotify. Oh, I have so many ideas on how to simplify the user interface or this flow. It's so stupid. And then it turns out we actually tested that, exactly what you're saying, and you're wrong. So, no, how can that be? Let's try it again. And we tried things again and again and again, but we looked at the numbers. Are things actually changing? Is the music streaming industry that different? No, it's the same everywhere. The vast majority of new ideas fail in experiments. Even experts often misjudge which ones will pay off. And this is Ron Kohavi, who led data and experimentation at Amazon and Microsoft. At Google and Bing, only about 10 to 20% of experiments generate positive results. So 80 to 90% of all they're doing is not going to have an effect, not a positive effect. So if you're not better than Microsoft and Google, there's a chance that your solutions have the same chance of success. Okay, looking a little bit behind user-facing things like a search engine, well, at Microsoft as a whole, 1/3 prove effective. That's a little better. 1/3 have neutral results, but this also points out that 1/3 have negative results. It's actually hurting our numbers, hurting our results. So if you're not measuring, if you're not following up, how are we actually succeeding? Even if the user asked for it, even if it's an internal user who said, I want this feature to work like this, it could still end up having a negative result. So we really need to move from opinions to data. We're working on X because Sam said it's important or the specification states it. And we're done when Sam is okay with it or when the specification is fulfilled. No. We're working on X because we think it's going to give impact Y, which matters to Spotify because of Z. And we're done when the metrics are moved. Or as Google would put it, let data drive decisions, not the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion. Okay, so a lot of companies understand this now, that this isn't working. Do what I say. This is how it's supposed to be done. This is the idea. Implement it, execute, and we all follow. But the opposite doesn't look that promising either. Do whatever. You're empowered. You're autonomous. Go and work. And you imagine people running in all social directions. But this is a false dichotomy. And it's a false understanding of autonomy. And in the words of my then colleague at Spotify in New York, Jason Yip, autonomy doesn't mean the freedom to do what you feel like. It's part freedom, but it's also responsibility. Autonomy means feeling free to act with all your capabilities to contribute toward a collective outcome. And we took to call that aligned autonomy at Spotify. So this is really explaining that autonomy acts within boundaries, within enabling constraints. So boundaries and constraints, that sounds like, well, that's limiting my autonomy. But just to give you an example, we have traffic rules. Drive on the right-hand side in Poland and in Sweden. We have traffic lights and we have speed limits and so on. Those are constraints. And they're limiting your freedom in a way, but they're enabling you to actually drive your car safely at the same time as hundreds, thousands, millions of other people are out there on the roads doing the same thing. So that's an enabling constraint rather than a governing constraint. And For a squad at Spotify, that meant if you come to work one day, you work on the radio squad, and you're like, oh, I want to work on moving our data centers to Google Cloud Platform. And we said, well, wait a minute, you're on the radio squad. Well, I'm not empowered, I don't have autonomy. You're not going to feel like that. It's like a given. Of course, you're working on this squad with a particular mission. If you don't want to support that mission, then you should probably look for another job inside of Spotify or elsewhere. But it's not really making you less empowered. It's defining what is the collective good that we're trying to accomplish through using our empowerment or autonomy. So it could be the mission. We can have a certain product strategy this quarter, this year, and then we have negotiated objectives and key results on what we should be focusing on, which is a back and forth conversation, not a top down. And within that, we have the autonomy to come up with solutions that the customers will love and that works for the business. So another way of looking at it from Stephen Bungay, the author of Art of Action. So you could have neither autonomy or alignment. You have an indifferent culture where people are sitting around and waiting for orders because they don't have autonomy and they don't know where to go. So people have to micromanage in order to get anything done. And then the authoritative organization with a conformist culture, develop radio. We figured it out. Just do it. Okay, well, we'll do what you say. We all walk towards the same star, develop the radio. But this is how alignment actually enables autonomy. We need to reach mainstream lean-back users. This is the goal because of this and this reason that we saw, and we're not seeing the numbers. And we have these constraints. We can't do this. We're bound by licensing with the labels so we can't do these solutions. We have other teams working on this and that. So you're giving them the goal and the alignment and the constraints or boundaries. And within that, great. Now we can collaborate with other teams that are also working on the same problem because we understand what people are doing. We understand the context. We understand the goal. And you get an innovative organization. And Spotify's struggle was often to, you figure out how because you know all of this information. We have clarity and alignment. And Spotify's trouble was often, this part, an entrepreneurial organization for sure, with lots of initiative and empowerment, but a very chaotic culture. And hope someone is working on the mainstream lean back user problem. And the difference is that when you're trying to move from here and you end up here, whoops, people are making the wrong decisions. They're not, we have too much autonomy. No, it's more likely that you have too little alignment, too little clarity on these things. Why? What's the goal? What are others doing? That will help you figure it out and move you up here. So the alternative to these traditional organizations is what we call aligned autonomy then. So we have cross-functional squads, small and long-lived, working on their mission, their products. They are given problems to solve, like the lean-back user problem, and they are accountable for the business outcome. How can we push the metrics? How can we engage these users? How can we get more subscribers in this user segment with the features or product space that we're working in? Management focuses on this vision and goals and supplying this strategic context, and then acts as servant leadership. What more do you need in terms of clarity? What context do you need? What do you need to understand? What competences do you need to be able to figure this out and accomplish these business outcomes and remove the obstacles for the most important feature of the organization, the squad? And now we have transparent information flowing both ways. We're seeing an uptake we're seeing very positive how our Play It Forward playlist was performing. So we have this data. Oh, apparently this is striking a chord with the lean back users, and we feed that back to management, which informs how they tweak the strategy and how they can share the strategic context with other teams so that we can collaborate towards the goal. So we do this monthly or quarterly maybe, not through annual plans, but work in collaboration, have this information from the squads inform strategy and the other way around. And this changes how product owners, product managers, business owners, leaders who are typically in charge with what should we be building, how they actually work. So, and this is unfortunately also has been around for a long time in textbook Scrum, that the product owners tends to be gatekeepers of context. So there's all this context about the product and data and the customer and what they think and how they use the product and so on. And then the product owner and potentially if you have a designer, they translate that into work items, backlog items, user stories, and these guys, implement. Low empathy with the customer. We have no connection. We don't really understand why we're doing this, and leading to low engagement and motivation. Instead, we want these people to facilitate the context and make it more easily digestible and accessible to the team so that they can be involved in coming up with solutions. So for instance, everyone would have access to these dashboards with metrics and data on how people are using the product, but the team members might not have the bandwidth, the capacity, or the skills to make sense of all of it. So the product manager could work on that together with the product insights or product operations people maybe, and display it and show that, okay, we have some registrations dropping out. To improve, we should optimize friction, get more people to play without hurting recommendations. That's a problem to solve. It's not saying build this feature. No, we have to work it out together. Given this information and context about the problem, what can we do? What are your ideas? What's the next experiment we should be trying? And the same with user interviews or customer research. So back to the team. They had this clear mission, where they were going, the goal. They had metrics, and they had the possibility to put things into production, test how is the behavior different, how is the metrics different. So the new idea was just go. And they did. They iterated, threw some things away, worked on it and improved it. They started using it in the team and continuously improving it, and ran lots of experiments. Like, what should the cover art look like? This is what it looked like for everyone in the beginning. But the oldest trick in the book when it comes to personalization, if we can get you to understand that this is personalized for you, then half the battle will be won. So how about, it's a picture of you, but with cool colors. We have this Facebook integration, so you can take your profile pictures on Facebook. And then architects and the others would say, no, that's computationally really expensive, and there's a content delivery networks and 70 million users and overlaying pictures. It's not going to be worth it. Let's test it. Testing it with a small percentage of the users, 10% lift in weekly average usage. Definitely worth it. That's a huge lift in these terms. What's the right length? 4 hours? 3 hours? Yeah, 4 hours, said the music nerds. No, 2 hours. Otherwise, it's feel like a stalker with a list of 100. Here's my mixtape with 100 songs. No. 30 songs, then you can believe that, yeah, I might like these. 100 songs. It's like 100 songs that I like every week? Don't think so. How often should it be updated? Every day, several times a day. No, that's too much, and people are going to start losing interest. But if it's every week, there's a reason to keep coming back without feeling that you're missing out. So if we get it wrong, should we err on the side of too unfamiliar or too familiar? Unfamiliar, because we don't want people to have, so you listen to When I'm 64 with the Beatles, so we suggest A Day in Life. It's on the same album, so that's too familiar. There's a chance you've listened to both of them. Let's be a little bit more edgy. And actually, we discovered that accidentally there was a bug that put a song or two that you had listened to previously at Spotify not that long ago. But before removing the bug, we looked at the metrics, and it turned out that it actually improved the result. And in user research, we found out that they now trust the player. This is something I like, so that makes me trust the recommendations, the other recommendations, even more. Yeah, and then there were a lot of strange things happening, but even to this day, Swedes complain that they get too much Danish and Norwegian music, but maybe it's just a guilty pleasure. The algorithm can't be wrong, right? So the winning formula: 2 hours of personalized music, refreshed every Monday morning, delivered in a standard playlist, the image based on the Facebook, and the songs replaced each week to really create this hook of you have to come in and check, otherwise you'll never know what you missed last week. And it was 100% data informed, no front-end development needed. Use the playlist, just use the things that we already have. So now what? Employee release. So they released it to employees without saying anything and just saw it start spreading virally. What's this? What team is working on this? So they knew, this could be something. And then they did a proper employee release, asking employees to try it out. They put a Google form link in the playlist description so people could actually give some feedback. And the rest of Spotify loved it. Wow, release it. It's as if my secret music twin put it together. Everything in it is good. And awesome survey results. So now what? Well, the CTO has said a team should be able to ship anything to 5% of users. No questions asked, no permissions needed, just go. Why? Well, in the words of the CEO or founder, we aim to make mistakes faster than anyone else, which taken out of context might look strange, but of course, in order to learn faster than anyone else and create this culture of experimentation. So both by saying it's okay to fail, let's celebrate failure. If you're not failing enough, you're not innovating enough, as the CTO would put in an internal blog post. Teams even started putting up fail walls. This is a mistake I did, and this is what I learned. The focus is on learning. Fail, first attempt in learning, as someone would claim the acronym is. But it's not just culture. It's also building the tools and the way you're working to make this possible. So we had microservices and decoupled architecture that gave us a limited blast radius. So if the album art blows up, the music still plays. If notifications blows up, the music still plays. And gradual rollouts. Something goes wrong, boom, we roll it back. So they were modest, released it to 1% of the users. Will they like it? We'll find out. And watching the data, it was great. They even kept the link to a Google form and got several hundreds of survey responses. And it turns out only a couple complained about, why is this showing up in my library, due to risk. So it was exaggerated or it was not founded. So watching the buzz on Twitter, it's scary how well Spotify Discover Weekly playlists know me. Like former lover who lived through a near-death experience with me well. At this point, Discover Weekly knows me so well that if it proposed, I'd say yes. Or Discover Weekly on Spotify eliminates the need for a musically knowledgeable boyfriend. Now I can be single forever. Economical win. So we have a winner. Yes, awesome. But there's a but, always a but. It didn't scale. So Spotify was a single user with 75 million shared playlists that changed every week on the same day. And just didn't scale. So it was just undeployed. And architects, senior engineers, other teams, they had told the team this. You can't do this. It's not going to scale. It's not how the playlist system is built. Wait for it. We have had plans for years to modify it and change it. You shouldn't do this. But they did it anyway. And it didn't work when they scaled. Twitter was in mourning. But now we knew we had a really strong indicator to sort out the tech issues. So we put many teams on that. They would now love to be involved in making this work because there was a clear priority for the company. That's what the value of proving this was. And we gradually rolled it out again. We tweaked the marketing message, used the owner's own language in the launch. So this is Swedish. But we actually A/B tested our way and saw that it performed worse. And when interviewing users, they said that it stood out more as a brand in its own when it was in English, the Discover Weekly. This just kind of got lost in the Swedish UI. And we used the Twitter buzz in a smart way in ads in the New York subway here, for instance. Polished the packaging a little bit, and it was a success. Discover Weekly reached 1 billion tracks streamed in 10 weeks, which is a huge success. Monday mornings, I take a bath and listen to Discover Weekly. Got really excited and started crying a little because I realized tomorrow is Monday and Spotify is making me a new Discover Weekly. It's actually so sad how excited I get for a new Discover Weekly on Spotify every Monday. Hence the claim that we accidentally fixed Mondays. People used to dread Mondays, now they're looking forward to it. Yeah, and this one is fun. Tom Conrad. Okay, everyone is right. Discover Weekly is absolutely perfect. And he was at the time co-creator of Pandora, Spotify's biggest competitor in the United States. So in any other organizations that I had been working before Spotify, an idea like Discover Weekly would probably never have seen the light of day, because you would have that needed permission in so many instances. Like, remember the first pyramid. Oh, I have an idea what we should build. Well, you don't have a project. Let's you have to write a return on investment business case, blah blah blah, and it's not going to happen. And you would have to need permission from the designers, and they would have said, no, we can't do this because of the YouTube thing. You would have needed from the technology team or architectures and so on to they would say, no, it won't scale. It's no idea. But they were empowered. They had the tools and the way of working to actually test these ideas and validate these risks and see that, no, it's actually working. So we believe that ingredients of successful innovation is that you put people and problems into a fail-friendly environment with cross-functional teams, where it's okay to throw things away and fail as long as you learn. And you learn or you can experiment by having enough slack in your schedule, not filled with features that we have to do for unknown reasons. And clear success metrics, a feedback infrastructure that allows you to do user testing, both qualitative through customer research or user interviews, and quantitative through A/B testing and so on, and a feedback loop. And awesome new stuff will come out in the end. And to really drive this home, it was funny that I've been telling this story at conferences and trainings for some time, and then the CEO came up with this interview. Fast Company asks, you've had some pretty successful consumer rollouts like Discover Weekly personalized playlist. And to many surprise, he says, I would have killed that if it was just me, 100%. Why would you have killed it? I never really saw the beauty of it. I questioned them 2-3 times. Are you sure you really want to do this? Why are we spending all this time and energy? For a while, we didn't give that team any more funding in terms of headcount, but they kept working on it anyway. All of a sudden, they shipped it. I remember reading about it in the press. I thought, oh, this is going to be a disaster. And then, obviously, it turned out to be something really successful. It's one of the most loved product features that we have. There are lots of things in this company that I didn't think were good ideas that turned into some of the best things, and then it goes on to list them. I think this is really powerful and shows how well this way of working works, to have empowered product teams, empowered engineers. Even when the CEO didn't think it was a good idea and wanted to give them funding, it doesn't matter. It's the one who knows the customer the best and can prove it with data. That's the opinion that's going to win, not the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion. So innovation can't be forced, just enabled and encouraged and supported. Managers can't make it happen, but they can create an environment to support it and stop it from being killed. If you want to learn more, I run courses on the product model explained, learnings from Spotify and the best product companies, one in person in Stockholm in December and one remote online next week, actually. And if you would be interested, I've offered this 20% discount for everyone attending this talk or this conference by that way. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You have my contact information. And I think I've used all my time, but if there are any questions, I'm available. And I've tried to connect to the platform for the conference and see if there are any questions there as well. Thank you.